My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 31 years old, and the day my daughter was born should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day my marriage broke. My husband missed our baby's birth. While I was in a hospital bed, crying and begging him to come, he was with another woman. Even now, when I close my eyes, I still see the empty chair beside my bed. It was the chair where Ethan should have been sitting, holding my hand, telling me I was strong, waiting to meet our baby with me. But that chair stayed empty for hours, and by the time he finally walked through the hospital door, everything had already changed. But to understand how I ended up giving birth without my husband, I have to go back a few weeks, back to the time when I still believed our marriage was safe. Ethan and I had been married for 4 years. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Chicago, in a small 2-bedroom house, with a white fence and a little front yard. It wasn't a fancy life, but it was ours. On weekends, Ethan mowed the lawn while I watered the flowers. At night, we sat on the couch and talked about baby names, diaper brands, and whether the nursery walls should be pale yellow or soft green. At least, that was how things used to be. By the last month of my pregnancy, something had changed. Ethan was still kind to me in small ways. He brought home orange juice when I craved it. He rubbed my swollen feet when I asked. He built the baby crib in the nursery and smiled when he touched my stomach and felt our daughter kick. If someone looked at us from the outside, they would have said we were a normal, happy couple waiting for their first baby. But I knew better. He was distracted all the time. His phone was always in his hand. If it buzzed, he looked at it right away. Sometimes he smiled at the screen. Sometimes he stepped into another room to answer a call. And every time I asked who it was, he gave me the same easy answer. Just work. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But then, one night, while I was folding tiny baby clothes in the nursery, I heard him laugh in the kitchen. It was a soft laugh, warm and private, the kind of laugh he used to save for me. When I walked in, he ended the call too quickly and slipped his phone into his pocket. "Who was that?" I asked. "Vanessa," he said. "She's having a hard time again." Vanessa Cole worked with Ethan at his marketing office. I had met her once at a company Christmas party. She was pretty, polished, and always a little too comfortable around married men. She had bright lipstick, a loud laugh, and the habit of touching Ethan's arm every time she spoke to him. I remembered that clearly. "What kind of hard time?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Ethan opened the fridge and avoided my eyes. "She's going through a messy divorce. She just needs someone to talk to." I stared at him. "At 10:30 at night?" He sighed, like I was the one being difficult. "Claire, she's alone. I'm just trying to be nice." I looked down at my belly. I was 8 months pregnant, my back hurt every day, and I could barely sleep through the night. I wanted to tell him that I was alone too, even with him standing right there, but I swallowed the words. "I'm not saying you can't be nice," I said quietly. "I just thought maybe your wife should come first right now." For a second, guilt flashed across his face. Then he stepped closer and kissed my forehead. "You do come first," he said. "Don't start imagining things." I nodded, but something inside me felt cold. A week later, I had one of the worst nights of my pregnancy. My ankles were swollen, my lower back felt like it was breaking, and sharp pains kept tightening across my stomach. I sat on the couch with tears in my eyes while Ethan put on his jacket. "Do you really have to go?" I asked. "Can't you stay home tonight?" He hesitated. "Vanessa called. She's really upset. I told her I'd stop by for an hour." I just stared at him. "I can barely walk, Ethan." "I know," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll be quick." Then he left. I sat there in the silence of our living room, one hand on my belly, the other gripping the edge of the couch, and for the first time, I felt a fear I couldn't explain. Not fear of labor, not fear of becoming a mother. Fear that when the moment came, when I needed my husband most, he would not be there. 3 nights later, at 2 a.m, I woke up with a sharp pain so strong it stole my breath. I pushed myself up in bed and felt something warm rush down my legs. My water had broken. My hands started shaking as I reached for my phone. Ethan wasn't home. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. I sat on the edge of the bed, breathing hard, staring at the wet sheets under me. My heart was pounding. This was it. Our baby was coming. I called Ethan first. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice low and sleepy. "Claire?" "My water broke," I said. My voice came out thin and breathless. "Ethan, it's time. I'm in labor." There was a pause on the line. Then I heard him stand up quickly. "What, right now?" "Yes, right now," I said, trying not to cry. Another pain hit me, sharp and deep, and I bent forward, clutching my stomach. "Please come home, please." "I'm coming," he said. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't panic." Then he hung up. I wanted to believe him. I moved slowly around the bedroom, trying to breathe through the pain the way I had learned in my birthing class. I grabbed my hospital bag from the closet and sat back down when another contraction hit. The room felt too quiet, too empty. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. I called him again. No answer. I called a second time, straight to voicemail. By the time Ethan finally called me back, I was standing by the front door, one hand on the wall, fighting tears. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "There's traffic. I'm almost there." Traffic. At 2:30 in the morning. I wanted to scream, but another contraction tore through me before I could say anything. I slid down to the floor, gasping. "Claire?" Ethan's voice sounded far away. "Claire, are you there?" "I can't wait anymore," I whispered. "I'm calling Megan." Megan Ross had been my best friend since college. She lived 20 minutes away, and when I called, she picked up right away. "Claire, what's wrong?" "I'm in labor," I said, crying now. "Ethan isn't here." She didn't ask questions. "I'm coming." Megan got to my house in 15 minutes, wearing sweatpants and no makeup, her hair tied in a messy bun. She looked terrified for me, but she moved fast. She helped me to the car, grabbed my hospital bag, and drove me to the hospital, while I held onto the seat and tried not to scream every time another contraction came. "Did you talk to Ethan?" she asked as we pulled into the emergency entrance. He says he's on his way, I said. But even as I said it, I heard how weak it sounded. At the hospital, everything happened fast. Nurses rushed me into a wheelchair, asked questions, checked my contractions, and took me to labor and delivery. The lights were too bright. The pain was getting worse. My body no longer felt like my own. And still, I kept looking at the door. Every time footsteps passed in this hallway, my heart jumped. Every time the door opened, I lifted my head, hoping to see Ethan's face. But it was never him. It was a nurse with forms, a doctor checking my blood pressure, Megan carrying ice chips, anyone but my husband. I texted him between contractions. "Where are you?" No answer. "They're admitting me. Please hurry." Nothing. Then, 20 minutes later, one message appeared on my screen. "On my way." Sorry, that was all. I stared at those 3 words until my vision blurred. Megan saw my face and took the phone from my hand. "Claire," she said gently, "don't do this to yourself right now." "How can I not?" I whispered. "He promised me." The hours passed in pain and fear. My contractions came harder, closer, stronger. At one point, I grabbed the bed rail and cried out, "I need my husband!" The nurse helping me that night, her name was Julia, pressed a cool cloth to my forehead. "Do you want me to call someone else for you?" she asked softly. I looked at the empty chair beside my bed and shook my head. "I just want Ethan." But Ethan never came. By late morning, I was fully exhausted. My hair was stuck to my face with sweat. My throat hurt from crying and breathing and trying to stay strong. Megan held one of my hands, and Nurse Julia held the other when the pushing started. And when my daughter finally entered the world, crying with that tiny angry voice, I felt my heart split open. She was beautiful, perfect, small and pink and alive. The doctor laid her on my chest, and I burst into tears the moment I touched her. She opened her little mouth, searching for warmth, and I kissed her forehead again and again. "Hi, baby," I whispered. "Hi, my sweet girl." It should have been the happiest moment of my life, but all I could think was this. Ethan is missing this. He wasn't there to hear her first cry. He wasn't there to cut the cord. He wasn't there to hold me while I became a mother. He wasn't there. I turned my head and looked at the chair beside the bed. Empty. Megan took the first picture of me holding our daughter. Megan cried when the nurse weighed the baby. Megan smiled when the doctor said, "She's healthy." Not my husband. Hours later, after I had already fed my daughter for the first time and signed hospital papers alone, the door finally opened. Ethan walked in. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was messy. His face looked pale, almost guilty. He stopped when he saw me holding the baby. "Claire," he said softly. I looked at him for a long time. Then I pulled the blanket a little higher around my daughter and said the only words I had left. "You missed her first breath." Ethan cried in the hospital room that day. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears that ran down his face while he stood near the door, staring at me and our daughter, like he had already lost us both. "Claire! I'm sorry!" He said again and again. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I was too tired to fight him. My body felt broken. My stomach hurt, my back hurt, and every part of me felt empty and heavy at the same time. I had just given birth, and all I wanted was to hold my daughter close and sleep for 100 years. So I didn't scream. I didn't ask where he had been. I didn't ask why his shirt smelled like perfume that wasn't mine. I just turned my face away and looked down at my baby girl sleeping in my arms. Her cheeks were soft and pink. Her tiny fingers curled against the blanket like little question marks. She had Ethan's dark hair and my nose. She was perfect. And somehow, that made everything hurt more. We named her Lily Grace Bennett. It was a name Ethan and I had picked together months earlier, one of the few happy things we had still shared. But when the nurse wrote Lily's name on the little plastic bassinet, I felt tears burn my eyes again. Ethan had missed the moment she became real. He had missed the moment she opened her eyes and cried for the first time. He had missed the moment I became a mother. And I still didn't know why. When we came home from the hospital 2 days later, the house felt different. It looked the same pale walls, same soft yellow nursery, same folded baby blankets waiting on the chair. But something inside it had shifted, like the walls had heard everything and could no longer pretend we were still a happy family. Ethan tried too hard. He made coffee for me this morning. He changed Lily's diaper before I could ask. He brought me water, toast, pain medicine, and extra pillows. He touched my shoulder softly, like he was afraid I might break if he used too much pressure. "Can I hold her?" he asked one afternoon. I looked at him for a long moment before placing Lily in his arms. He stared down at her, his face crumpling with emotion. "She's beautiful," he whispered. I said nothing. The truth was, every time I looked at him holding our daughter, I saw the empty hospital chair. I saw the clock on the wall moving forward while I lay there alone. I heard myself crying for him while another woman had his time, his attention, his concern. Still, I tried to keep the peace for a few days. Maybe because I was exhausted. Maybe because I wasn't ready to hear the truth. Or maybe because a small part of me still hoped there was some explanation that would hurt less than the one in my head. But the truth found me anyway. It happened 4 days after Lily was born. Ethan had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on low. Lily was finally sleeping in her bassinet beside me, and I was sitting in the nursery chair, too tired to sleep myself. My body ached. My stitches hurt. My eyes burned from crying when no one was looking. That was when Ethan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. I wasn't trying to snoop. At least that's what I told myself. I only looked because I thought it might be work, and I didn't want the sound to wake Lily. But the screen lit up before I could turn it over, and one name appeared in bright white letters. Vanessa. My stomach dropped. The message showed only one line at first. "Thank you for last night. I don't know what I would have done without you." For a second, I couldn't breathe. My fingers moved before my mind caught up. I picked up the phone and stared at the rest of the message as it opened. "I know Claire was calling, and I'm sorry. But I needed you. Thank you for staying with me." I read it once. Then again. Then one more time, because my brain refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Claire was calling. She knew I was in labor. She knew Ethan's wife was trying to reach him while she sat with him somewhere else. And Ethan stayed. My hands started shaking so hard, I almost dropped the phone. I opened the message thread, and what I found made my whole body go cold. There were months of messages, not just friendly check-ins, not just work questions, late-night talks, private jokes, heart emojis, messages from Ethan saying things like, "I wish things were easier. You calm me down. I hate going home to stress lately. I'll come if you need me." And then the message from the night I gave birth. "Vanessa, please don't leave yet. I'm falling apart." "Ethan, I'll stay until you're okay." I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, not like a scream, more like a quiet break deep in my chest, the sound of love dying. I was still holding his phone when Ethan walked into the room. The moment he saw my face, he froze. "Claire!" I stood up slowly, clutching the edge of the table for balance, Ethan's phone in my hand. "You stayed with her," I said. My voice was low and shaking. "I was giving birth to your daughter, and you stayed with her." Ethan looked at me like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. His face went pale. His mouth opened, then closed again. For a moment, he said nothing. The silence between us felt heavy and ugly, like something rotten finally brought into the light. Lily was asleep in her bassinet by the couch, her tiny chest rising and falling in slow, peaceful breaths. She had no idea that her parents' marriage was breaking apart only a few feet away from her. "Claire," Ethan said quietly, "please let me explain." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. My eyes burned, and I could feel tears pressing behind them, but I refused to let them fall yet. "Explain what?" I asked. "Explain why you ignored my calls while I was in labor. Explain why another woman knew I was calling you from the hospital, and you still stayed with her? Or explain why you've been telling her things you stopped telling your wife months ago." His shoulders dropped. "It wasn't what it looks like," he said. I stared at him in disbelief. "You really want to say that to me right now?" He rubbed both hands over his face, then looked down at the floor. "Vanessa was having a breakdown. She called me crying. She said she was scared and alone. I drove over to calm her down, and then you called, and everything happened so fast." I cut him off. "No. Don't do that. Don't say everything happened so fast like this was some accident you couldn't stop. I called you and told you I was in labor. I told you your daughter was coming, and you still stayed with her." His eyes filled with tears again. "I thought I had time. I thought I could calm her down and still make it before the baby came." I felt my whole body go cold. "You thought you had time," I repeated. "Yes," he whispered. I nodded slowly, but inside, something was settling into place. Something hard, something final. "That's the problem, Ethan," I said. "You thought comforting another woman was more urgent than being with your wife while she gave birth. You made that choice. Maybe you didn't sleep with her. Maybe you didn't kiss her. But you chose her over us, and I don't know how I'm supposed to forget that." He stepped closer, tears running freely now. "I never meant to hurt you. I swear, Claire, I never wanted this." "Then why did you do it?" I asked. He looked away. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the soft hum of the baby monitor and Lily's tiny, sleepy sighs. Then he said the words I think I had known for months, even before I was brave enough to admit them. "Because being with her felt easy," he said. "She needed me, and I didn't have to think about how scared I was. About becoming a father, about bills and responsibility, and all the ways I felt like I was failing you. With Vanessa, I could pretend I wasn't drowning." I closed my eyes. There it was. The truth. He hadn't missed our daughter's birth because of traffic or bad timing or some emergency beyond his control. He had missed it because another woman made him feel better, and he chose comfort over responsibility. He chose escape over love. When I opened my eyes again, I felt strangely calm. I set his phone down on the coffee table and walked over to Lily's bassinet. I lifted her carefully into my arms and held her against my chest. She smelled like baby lotion and warm milk. She made a soft little sound and tucked her face against me. Ethan watched us with panic in his eyes. "Claire," he said, "please don't do this. Please. I know I messed up, but I can fix it. I'll cut Vanessa off. I'll quit my job if I have to. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me." I looked down at Lily's sleeping face before I answered. "When I was in that hospital bed," I said softly, "I kept staring at the door, waiting for you. Every time it opened, I thought it would be you. I kept telling myself my husband would come, that he would never leave me alone on the worst day of my life." My voice broke, but I kept going. "But you did. And now every time I look at our daughter, I will remember that the first person who held my hand after she was born was not her father. It was my best friend. The first person who took her picture was not her father. It was Megan. The first person who told me I was doing great was a nurse, not the man who promised to love me." He covered his mouth and started crying harder. "I said I was sorry," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't change what happened." I walked to the nursery window and looked out at the quiet street. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft orange light. A few days ago, I would have stood there and cried over the life I thought I was losing. Now I understood something I hadn't understood before. I was not losing my life. I was saving it. I turned back to Ethan. "I'm not going to raise my daughter in a home where love means begging someone to choose you," I said. "I'm not going to teach her that a woman should forgive anything just because a man feels guilty afterward. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to forget the day you abandoned us." His face crumpled. "So that's it?" I looked at Lily, then back at him. "Yes," I said quietly. "That's it." 2 weeks later, I moved into my mother's guest room with Lily and 2 suitcases. It wasn't the life I had planned. I cried in the shower. I cried while folding Lily's tiny clothes. I cried the first time she smiled in her sleep, and Ethan wasn't there to see it. But little by little, like grief washing out of me. At night, I rocked Lily in my arms and whispered promises into her soft, dark hair. "I'm sorry your first day in this world was full of pain," I told her. "But I promise you this, my sweet girl. You will never have to earn love. You will never have to beg someone to stay. And you will never grow up thinking being abandoned is normal. Sometimes losing a marriage feels like losing everything. But the day my daughter was born, I learned something I will carry for the rest of my life. The people who truly love you do not disappear when you are in pain. And if someone can leave you alone in your darkest hour, then walking away is not the end of your story. Sometimes, it is the beginning of your peace.